July 12, 1979 marks the craziest night in baseball history. To say that a disaster unfolded would be a massive understatement, but what exactly led to 7,000 fans rushing on the field, 39 people getting arrested, the forced forfeiting of a game that never even started, and the death of an entire music genre?
One of the saddest sights I've ever seen in a ballpark in my life. This garbage of demolishing a record has turned into a fiasco.
Disco sucks! Disco sucks! Disco sucks!
And then I just... Oh, that felt good.
This is Steve Dahl, a radio DJ who had a severe and unending hatred for disco. Much like him, his listeners also hated the genre, and after hosting some ineffective anti-disco stunts, he was ready to take his hatred to the next level. So he began brainstorming. With every one of his brain cells running on overdrive, he thought of something so brilliant it might just drive a dagger into the heart of disco music and kill the genre once and for all. That's right, he was gonna blow up a crate full of disco records while live on air from a shopping mall. Hey Steve, why would you waste a perfectly good crate of disco records at the mall? Why not come to my baseball stadium? Do it in front of the fans. Give the people what they want. You see, Mike Veeck, the promotions director for the White Sox and the son of the team's owner, was looking to bring in more fans, and a crazy stunt like this seemed just stupid enough to work. On July 12th, there was a doubleheader against the Tigers at Comiskey Park, and the time in between those games would offer a perfect window to eradicate some records. On that day, there was already a promotion that let teens buy tickets at half price, but if fans brought their own disco records to add to the pile, they would be able to get in the stadium for 98 cents. Just like that, Disco Demolition Night was born. Now, the White Sox were not having a particularly good season, and as you would expect, their attendance had been quite low all year. Steve Dahl fully anticipated blowing up these records in front of some empty seats with a few people here and there, but a low turnout would be humiliating. Mike Veeck, however, knew better and hired enough security to control 35,000 people, 15,000 more than the anticipated crowd. On July 12th, mere hours before the doors were set to open, multiple very rich business people shook hands in the ballpark. A business success win felt imminent. They said to each other, nothing could go wrong.
As we say, the second game
on fire in center field.
As people started to arrive, the fear of not filling seats was put to rest rather quickly, but maybe a little bit too quickly. As fans flooded to the stadium with their disco records, seats began to fill and fill and fill until there were 47,795 people in attendance. Now is probably a good time to mention that the capacity of Comiskey Park is 44,500. Oh yeah, there were also at least 20,000 waiting outside the already over max capacity stadium, and some of them were climbing turnstiles, fences, and open windows to get in. Needless to say, this was not going to be a normal night. As it turned out, paying 98 cents for a ticket with the small sacrifice of one disco record was a much more appealing offer than anybody anticipated. But the more immediate problem was the sheer amount of records. This right here is the 4x6x5 foot box that they used to collect disco records. How many do you think it could hold? Not nearly enough is the correct answer, so when it started overflowing, fans just didn't put them in the box. This meant that countless people were in the stands holding sharp projectiles that were quite aerodynamic, and what did they do with those projectiles? Well, they held on to them, of course, at least until there was a good opportunity to throw them on the field. With the game underway and anti-disco signs hanging everywhere, pauses were frequent and numerous. As a strong smell of pot permeated the stands, fans threw anything they could grab onto the field, which the outfielders just tossed to the side. But eventually, the discs started flying.
Please don't destroy the fun of the evening for people or cause injury and get yourself arrested and taken from the park. Please don't do that. Thank you.
The catcher just refused to catch anymore. He almost got hit with a firecracker, Harry.
Boy, there's a million banners here. You know, they could just keep from throwing those records on the field. It'd be just a tremendous promotion.
After what was probably some of the scariest 9 innings the players had ever been through, the Tigers beat the White Sox 4-1. But let's be honest, nobody really cared. The people wanted to see disco destruction, or what I like to call 98 cents well spent.
Us rock and rollers here in Chicago think disco sucks. Disco sucks. We're going to attempt the world's largest disco demolition. 1, 2, 3, yeah!
"Father, the fans are going ballistic. This is turning out to be a massive success. Let me tell you, this day is gonna go down in history as the most successful success in the history of..."
Mike,
Yeah?
why is there still smoke in the outfield?
Oh, don't worry about that. We'll get it sorted. The explosion of disco records burned a massive hole in the outfield. They were not going to get it sorted, but that was kind of the least of their problems. Remember the 20,000 people outside of Comiskey Park? Well, they didn't quite disappear. In fact, the scene outside of the ballpark resembled a stampede. But inside the ballpark, things were calm and orderly, and thousands of fans were rushing on the field at once. As it turned out, a combination of weed, alcohol, and anti-disco was a perfect recipe for complete chaos. The mob of people partook in such activities as running the bases, stealing the bases, joining the third base club, destroying glass bottles, destroying more disco records, destroying the batting cage, climbing the foul poles, and it even got to a point where the game announcer, Harry Carey, attempted to calm down the crowd by singing "Take Me Out to the Ballpark" while all of this was going on.
I don't care if I ever get back on Millwood. Root for the White.
Come on now! Back to your seats! So we can play ball!
For it's
Everybody!
2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Okay, let's start.
At around 9 p.m., police dressed in full riot gear showed up to the ballpark, and after that, people quickly began to disperse. 39 were arrested and around 30 were injured. Bill Veeck, the owner of the White Sox, attempted to get the second game started, but the umpire crew chief took one look at the field and determined the service to be unplayable. Additionally, Sparky Anderson, the manager of the Tigers, didn't allow his players on the field, citing safety concerns, but the game just getting postponed wasn't enough for him. He argued that under the rules, a game could only be postponed due to an act of God, and shockingly, he deemed that 7,000 drunken stoned fans storming the field and causing chaos didn't quite fall under that description. Alas, the White Sox had to forfeit the second game. In the following days, Steve Dahl said that for the most part, everything was wonderful. Was it though? Well, depends on who you ask. Bill Veeck took the brunt of the initial criticism for the night, even though it was his son Mike who was primarily responsible. As a result, Mike was not able to find a job in baseball for quite some time. But at the end of the day, the one who will forever be linked to the incident is none other than Steve Dahl. In years following, his intentions were questioned to say the least, but he maintained that the night was simply about being sick of the genre. A quick look at his history with disco, however, tells us that he may have had both a financial incentive and a grudge. But despite all that, there's no denying one thing. Disco Demolition Night was without a doubt the most successful promotion of all time. Seriously, in what world does anything that isn't called 10-cent beer night attract so many fans to watch two below-average teams play that the stadium was overflowing, and that's after they closed the gate on the 20,000 or so people waiting outside? Additionally, if you Google search the day that disco died, Disco Demolition Night pops up, because following the event, the genre had a steep decline in popularity. So it not only accomplished the goal of getting fans to the stadium, it quite literally killed disco.